The local weather is so very important, and acknowledging like all the crazy stuff we've been seeing, from the wildfires to obviously the cold air, snowing in the Gulf of Mexico. It is crazy. You're just seeing things like this with your eyes, and it's like this happens every year. And these big heavy rain events and this flooding.
All right. Well, hey there, America. Welcome to the first Two Dudes from Long Island podcast. We are your hosts, Don and Glenn, and we are pumped to see you here with us. Before we get to our first guest, though, we have a massive announcement. Yes. And other than this podcast, which I know there's been a lot of guesses about the podcast, and you were kind of right, but there's something else.
It is OnlyFans.
Only feet. It's feet finder.
Right.
We can edit that out in post. So we are announcing Cross Country Weather Network. Not because we're replacing Island-wide weather. Island-wide weather is not going anywhere.
It's our baby.
But because increasingly audiences across the country are getting their news and weather through other means other than just normal television. They open up their phones first thing in the morning. They're looking at their apps. They're looking at the social media sites. People, 75,000 of you, almost 76,000 of you have come to us on a regular basis for your weather and not turning on other forms of media to get that information. And what we want to do is replicate that across the country. We are joining up with as many local, professional, and amateur meteorologists that we can to bring you the same local forecast to areas across the country. We'll also be bringing content to everybody, such as videos, cool scientific facts, scientific experiments that you can do with your kids at home, and features that surround us on a day-to-day basis, as well as podcasts like the Two Dudes from Long Island.
Yeah, man.
And other relevant information. We want to be the one place that you go to across the country for whatever weather is happening across the country. We know that a hurricane doesn't just impact one local area. It impacts an entire geographic region of our country. Just look at this past season to see that. Destruction from Florida all the way up into the Carolinas, into Tennessee.
Yep.
Wildfires in California, that the smoke is going to travel across the country at some point in time. Blizzards that will cripple entire areas of the country, up and down the I-95 corridor. But look what just happened down in the Gulf states. New Orleans was essentially shut down over 8 inches of snow, something that they never see. But wouldn't it be nice if there was some place you could go to for all of this information? Thank you, and welcome to Cross Country Weather. And now for our first guest.
This is big.
Huge. You may know him locally from his time on News 12, FiOS, but also CBS Philadelphia, Fox Weather, and now the chief meteorologist out in Rhode Island, and also a Stony Brook alum. Please welcome our first guest to the podcast, Jeff Benson.
Let's go. Jeff Benson. What's up, man?
You just before we start here, you guys were talking big as in my personality, not my waistline, right?
Well, I mean,
we didn't specify, nor will I.
I guess you leave that open to interpretation.
Listen, you can't hold me to it.
The three of us are, I mean, I wouldn't say we're the skinniest.
The holidays were not kind to me, okay?
They were trying at times.
There's still time for that New Year's resolution,
That's right. It's unless apparently there's like a, what is it, international like give up day or something. It's like January 17th, which is passed.
That's for quitters.
But you have to. But you have to.
We're not quitters.
We have to start first before you can give up. Did we even get to the starting point?
I'm so thrilled to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me as your first guest here, and also big congratulations on the new endeavor, the nationwide endeavor. So excited for you guys.
Thanks, man.
I think it's going to be great. We'll just say that it's going to be great. Yeah, there's so many opportunities and possibilities with this, and really excited to see how you guys grow it in the coming weeks and months and years.
Yeah. So, you guys are gonna you'll be seeing Jeff a bunch, a lot now. More so, a lot of his content and stuff will be around. So, this is just the start of a big endeavor for us. And like Don said, we are not at all going to be abandoning Island Wide. That's our baby. Nothing's going to change on that. We're expanding. So
10 years and going strong with Island-wide weather. We're excited for the next 10. But as I stated in the intro, which I'm sorry if I'm reading from the screen, we know that other people have asked for local. Do we know of other people who do local forecasts like ourselves in other areas of the country? People who still follow us, who used to live here on Long Island, or they have family in other areas of the country. When I posted about the Santa Ana winds a while back, somebody actually tagged somebody's local page as part of their comment, and that's the kind of folks that we want to reach out to. We want to partner with them in order to bring together an underground weather community that really needs to be tapped into.
Yeah, and people ask, dude, can you forecast for Florida? My answer, I just moved to North Carolina. I wish you guys were here, so now we're gonna kind of be there,
they can take you with them.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Also, before we keep going, we're gonna talk with Jeff a little bit here. We are a people's pub again.
Yes.
And our gracious host for us, this is kind of going to be our home for podcasts and moving forward. And we'll get to the behind the scenes here towards the end. But guys, can't thank you enough for
shout out to Matt,
for all this.
Pete, and Mike.
Yes, this is awesome. So all right, Jeff, let's grind him with questions. So we're gonna make him feel uncomfortable now.
Can we just go ahead and address the elephant in the room? I'm wearing flannel today.
Yes.
And I heard about it this morning. I said, oh boy, here we go. So.
True long.
We're not in Seattle, Jeff. We're not in Seattle.
Oh, it feels like Seattle today.
I forgot my Starbucks cup and my Mariners hat,
So, all right, this is something I've been meaning to ask of you when we started talking about this a few weeks ago. Is you've been on TV, right, for a number of years. This is our first time doing something in this medium. Obviously, there's some butterflies. What was it like your first time on TV?
I will say this, my first actual, because I had made tapes and videos at bigger stations before that weren't getting broadcast to the public. So the first time I did content that was actually in the back of your head, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are potentially watching this, could potentially see this at some point.
No pressure.
I mean, obviously you plant you plant that in your head and then you start getting those butterflies. But it did help that my first station, it was not a very large weather. Our weather set was kind of like segregated from the main news set. And so without the pomp and circumstance of all that around you, you can kind of just have your blinders on and do your thing. And it helped a lot. We did a lot of taping segments as opposed to all live too. So that also helped. Although I've discovered over the years that I am much better when you put me on the spot live. There's just like that switch in your brain.
Well, you're forced to just go. You can't. You don't have time to think about it.
There's a switch in your brain. Yeah. And also if you're like a perfectionist in any aspect and you do a tape, I could have said that sentence better. I don't like that word. And then you start thinking about it. So I say just bring on the live and, get it done with. But again, at first, when you have that nervous energy, it definitely helped to have it in that format. So it was a easing in process. But we talked about this before we went live. Every time you do some kind of new medium, podcast, radio, whatever, they still there. They still come out.
And especially when you care too. When you really care about it, you know what I mean?
Yes, right. If you don't care, then you're just like,
then it's whatever.
Right?
Yeah. So, well, we care, man.
We care.
So let's segue off of that. Your first television station. You're a graduate of Stony Brook, right?
Yes.
Why meteorology, man? It's a lot of math and science.
Well, because my guidance counselors, plural, I remember a couple of them that stuck with me, and they were really great at helping me figure out what I wanted to do in high school. I wish they would have been a little bit more along the lines of, hey, before you dive headfirst into this thing that you really like, let's maybe stop a second and think, is there a big job pool? How do they pay? Where will I have to go for the job? Sure. Is the job that I want going to be readily available? Right. The things that you really, and I think nowadays that's going to become more of an emphasis. Yeah. I always, I make the joke that there should be a mandatory course in either high school, college, or both called careerology, where you just do nothing but learn how to, get jobs, write resumes, things like that. Sure. And then you can also, you have a unit where you focus in on just getting a job in your field.
Yeah. Dude, there's so much you don't know in high school. Like you think you know everything, and it's I wish I knew this. I wish I knew that.
You think you're just gonna roll out of bed one day with a diploma in your hand and walk right into a job, and obviously it's not how it works.
And meteorology is nationwide. I mean, you could work. I mean, you want to stay local, but you get an offer in California. It's like, oh, I'm going. Now your whole life's changing.
It's so true. And a lot of the times you have to go to smaller markets as well because not a lot of people walk out of college. A lot of us are raw talent. And not molded into a defined meteorologist and can't just walk into a top 10 market. So you got to go to small markets, kind of work your way up, work your way back to the East Coast or the West Coast. And so, it was very tough. And you think about it, Glenn and Don, how many TV meteorologists are there in the entire country? There's about 230 markets. Let's say 225 for a nice number. Yeah. Let's be generous and say there's 5 meteorologists per station per market. You have to think there's only 3,000-4,000 people that do what we do. Maybe upwards of 5. For smaller markets and smaller stations, but there are not a ton of jobs. So it was a big part of this was getting your foot in the door, make networking, which is such a big thing with so many jobs and industries. Just at this point in life, at this point in the game, because social media has become so prevalent.
Yes.
I remember first coming out, we were part of the first Facebook generation.
Yeah.
And after I graduated, it was social media, that makes you really marketable. Now everybody knows social media. Everybody's on TikTok making money off of it. So I feel like if you don't have social media skills now, you get left behind.
Sure.
So it's such a changing landscape. There were just so many things. And again, these are the things that you weren't really getting prepared for. So it was kind of a fortunate, you have to be pretty decent at what you do, but you also have to have a little luck now and then. And when you get an opportunity that comes along, you got to be ready to seize it. So I would say if I knew how tough it would be to make it in this industry, I maybe would have given me some pause when I was thinking about a career.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate to find my way, and here we are.
So you've forecasted in a few media markets.
Yes.
You grew up here in Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a completely different market, completely different geography, completely different meteorology there. I mean, how in the world do you go from one market where you knew the tendencies, you knew the ocean was an impact here? I mean, we've been working at this for 10 years now. You are now up in Providence.
Yeah.
And you were in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
How long is it that ramp up to get from like one market to the next?
Well, with those 3 markets, they're all fairly similar. We have the ocean influence, rain snow line battles. There's topography inland. There are a lot of similarities in these forecasts. And so, coming from, let's say, New York and then going to like the panhandle of Texas or like the mountains in the Pacific Northwest, that would be such a big game changer to learn all those little weather niche things that each market has. So I always say that I was very fortunate to not have to have a big learning curve. But then going and working at a place like Fox Weather was really awesome because you get to learn all the different types of weather that other parts of the country have. You learn about burn scars from wildfires in the West Coast. You learn about like the rain shadow that the Cascades give in like Seattle. You learn about all these cool things, these little weather phenomena that each region has that we don't have up here in the Northeast. And it really makes you, it like broadens your horizons and you're like, wow, there's just so much other weather out there. Sometimes we get so, focused on our little slice of the pie, you don't realize all the other cool stuff that's going on. So it definitely broadened my horizons. And severe weather, tornado coverage, although we have had our fair share here in the last 5 years. It's been wild. We've been mini tornado alley, it seemed like at times. But doing that on a daily basis during like April and May, and then second severe season in the in the deep south in October, November, early December, just really broadens your horizons.
I'm checking the locals. Obviously, yours, Joe Rao, Joe Chaffee, Brian Fitzgerald will post one out every now and again. I'll check his. I'm obviously checking the National Weather Service, as well as who's ever on News 12. We're checking out those guys as well. And then the ABC, CBS, and out in the city to see what people are posting. And it's interesting to see we're all looking at the same data and putting out completely different snow maps.
Yeah. I think any meteorologist would be lying if they said that they did not at least peak even after they make their own snow map. And I do, of course, but I like to make my first iteration of the snow map cold turkey, like not looking at any, National Weather Service. Obviously, I'm going to look at my data, right? I'm going to make my map. And I'll peek after the fact, and I just want to see what they're doing, and maybe where they're thinking. Oh, okay, I see why they might have did that. Maybe if everything looks the same, I might drag that down. 12 hours from now, if the data looks approximately the same. But I obviously want to make as minimal changes as possible, if you can.
Sure.
Allow it, or you can afford to do so. Unless there's a crazy change in the trend of the modeling, and the storm comes in, and you go from 2 to 12. You want to make as little changes as possible.
Snowy dream, yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would be lying if I said, everybody peaks, I think.
We check.
We have to.
It's part of the territory.
We get asked quite often, why does this person post this and that person post that? And our go-to response is usually to stay away from those types of things. We don't want to be controversial. We don't want to bash anybody else's forecast. They have their reasoning for their reasons, right?
Yeah.
But the very least is we are looking at if something is way off, right? We will ask ourselves why. What are they seeing that we're not, right? We don't care about being first. We just want to be right.
That's right. I mean, you see it in other areas of journalism today. Everybody's just so worried about being first.
First, right?
Oh, God.
And that's just
dude, it's so annoying.
Yeah, rather than fact check,
accurate,
take
right?
your time, make it right.
Yep.
That's all we get, man. That's why, Don and I mean, we tried to post anything too early because 80% of the time it doesn't happen. I heard from this page, they got this, and then it's like, did I text him, dude? We got to post, man, because
right.
And then
the pressure.
Yeah, and then we got to word it right. Yeah. That's look, we're watching, and we try to tell everybody, we're always watching. We check the models 10 times a day.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we really feel that the pattern is setting up right or something's going to happen, then we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a good balance, and listen, there's a good balance about being early with something, and being forthright with your viewers. I love to say hey, listen, you're gonna see a lot of stuff on social media probably if you follow the Twitter pages, the social media. Yeah. We call them the weather weenies. The people that they really just will post a screenshot of a model from 300 hours out, which is a little irresponsible to do.
Of course,
especially if you don't put a disclaimer or anything. But I like to say this has piqued my interest. You will see buzz about this. Just, pump the brakes a little bit. I think there's a few more days before, we need to sound the alarm.
We talk about the pattern a lot, too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Look, the pattern is favorable.
That's the thing. You got to talk about the patterns. And you guys do a great job of that.
Thanks,
Talking about the patterns is important because the patterns is the reason why something will lead to something or potentially lead to something, as opposed to just, and ensemble forecasting is important as opposed to just one operational model.
100%.
Yeah.
Upper layer
again,
versus surface, yes.
It's about responsibility, and not, blowing things out of proportion, but also at the same time making sure everybody's prepared.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
it.
So I've got a question that I've had to ask. I know you're a huge New York Yankee fan. I am not a New York Yankee fan.
You're a Mets fan.
Well,
I'm a huge Mets fan. Glenn is also a huge Mets fan.
I'm married to a Mets fan.
You're married to a Mets fan?
That's right.
Shout out to your wife.
Yes.
Well, Chrissy's a Yankee fan. I mean, we have the same disagreement at home.
Thankfully, Renee's a Met fan. But you're a Yankee fan in enemy territory, my man.
You know what, man? Here's the funny thing. Southern New England, there's a lot more Yankee fans than you might think. And in fact, our sportscast covers both the Red Sox and the Yankees. Other sports, it's, the Patriots, the Celtics, the Bruins.
Right.
But we show Yankee highlights because there's Southern New England.
Connecticut, I can see.
That divide. Yeah,
Where is that line?
I don't know if there is a distinct cut line, like you could draw a line through it. I think it's just, it obviously starts becoming more and more red as you get further north. So, it's really not as, like, if I were in Boston, it would be a totally different dynamic than where it is.
Do you wear your Yankee hat proudly in public?
I do. Not that often. Not that often.
That's guts, man.
But,
that's guts.
It's funny. And but no, the Yankee Mets battle is more of a big household battle because now my son, we used to say go Yankees when we go to bed. Mommy taught him go Mets, and now he says it to get a rise out of me. He says it to get a rise out of me, and then I'm like, oh, okay, haha. But seriously, go Yankees.
Does he know Does he know Juan Soto yet, or is that?
He's too young. Three, right?
But he's starting to catch on to names, so I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
He's gonna
Juan's not going anywhere for
He's
a
gonna be a
while,
senior in
so-
high school.
Yeah,
Juan
right.
Soto is. That's all
I was my
Probably
son,
when they're done paying Bobby Bonilla too.
All right.
No, once they're done paying
That
Bonilla,
ends soon.
they owe Soto like another 7 years after the Bonilla contract
It's
ends.
crazy. So,
But my son, he plays t-ball locally. Shout out to his t-ball team. And his coach is a massive Yankee fan. And as he's handing out the Yankee hats and jerseys, he looks at me and goes, "Sorry, not sorry," as he's handing out the jerseys. And I'm like, oh, you're so rotten. So rotten.
oh,
All right.
great.
So what has happened over the last month has been record breaking in a lot of places. We just saw record breaking snows down along the Gulf Coast. Houston had record breaking snow. New Orleans, other parts of Mississippi. There was a beach on Biloxi, Mississippi, the beach where it was covered in snow and the palm trees were covered in snow. All because of another polar vortex outbreak. It's a buzzword, and it has been for many years, but highly misunderstood because people don't truly understand what is actually happening to cause what's called a polar vortex outbreak. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, and it's so funny because I showed, obviously, first time you get this big Arctic outbreak, it's nice to break out the polar vortex graphics and do some refreshers and explainers on what it is and what it is not and all the misconceptions. And I actually said on air, I was like, I remember, about 10 or so years ago when the buzzword polar vortex first got into the mainstream media, kind of like now how like bombogenesis, bomb cyclone has been in the media.
People comment on us on our page all the time about that.
Yeah. So, and sometimes used out of context a little bit. Some people like to use it a little too frivolous. Or
They don't
too
really
freely.
understand how it develops.
I'm showing the graphic now
Yes.
of what it looks like when one of these outbreaks actually happens. You see those below average temperatures all the way down to Mexico.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we showed the graphic, talked about how it's the buzzword, and again, what it is, what it isn't. And I think the craziest part about it was the fact that it got so far south this time. We get it here in the Northeast plenty.
Sure.
You get it in the upper Midwest, you see those 40 below wind chills. But to see temperatures and wind chills like down in the teens in New Orleans was just like, this is crazy. And to have the storm develop coinciding with that,
was awesome.
that's what made it's such a rare event to have those two things come together.
Yeah.
And that's why you saw the record-breaking snows that you did all along the Gulf Coast, and it was really, really crazy to see all that. And another cool thing that we use too nowadays, I like to use the high split model, the NOAA high split model, where you can track the air parcels.
Yes.
And you can say, here's our air right now. It's cold, right? Where did it come from? Here it is last week in Siberia.
Cool
Here it is in
stuff.
the
I
Arctic
thought
Circle.
that was probably one of the cooler new tools to see in the last 5 years when you started busting that out. When you were at News 12, actually, I saw you bust that out on one of your weekend forecasts. I'm like, that is an interesting take.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it. Like, okay, where does this cold front,
Right.
the cold air actually originate from?
The proof is in the pudding.
Sure.
You can't even argue it. You can't be like, well, we think it comes from the North Pole. No, it literally
does.
is coming from here.
Yeah.
Which is-
Santa!
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Santa sent us the cold air.
Yeah.
And you know what? And people, I mean, they're commenting on our posts about, well, it's not that cold. It's not that. It's just, it feels like winter here. But to the point is, it's not that it's cold here. It's the impressive widespread
Thanks.
dumping of
Yeah.
cold, like down all the way to Mexico. I mean, that's what makes it impressive and record breaking. I mean, sometimes actually some of our coldest air here comes from like an Arctic clipper that lasts for like 48 hours.
Yes, quick.
From like Pennsylvania north, and it's like 40 below in Maine, for real.
Yeah.
10 below here, and then it's gone.
Mount Washington's got
but the rest of the
record-breaking
country
winds.
is 80% is above normal.
above normal.
I will say this, and I don't want to, climate change. I don't want to go crazy with it, but I will say this. I saw very interesting statistics. You compare, this is for up in Providence where I am, the average winter temperatures from 1970 to today. The whole graph is up, down, because there's so much change from year to year. But there's an average trend line, and the harsh cold. We're talking like the real bitter stuff that we're dealing with. We dealt with last week. There's less bitter cold, and I see this from someone who shows our almanac every day, and you see the record lows, and it'll be like, oh, this day in 1973 it was 15 below. The next day it was 20 below. It was 10 below, and I'm like, we hit a lot of record temperatures during the summer, like high temperatures. In the winter, I feel like we never hit record cold temperatures, and I would think it would probably be pretty similar down here since we're so close in proximity. We just don't have the same, level of cold. So it's still cold, but is it as cold as it used to be? Maybe not. But again, can your body tell the difference between 10 and 20 below?
No.
Wind chills, it's hard to.
I tell people all the time, it's like, you get to 10 degrees, you will not feel the difference between 10 and 0. You just won't. Your body's not meant for that.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring up Providence. My father grew up there. And when we were growing up down in Virginia, and he would talk about how his winters up in Rhode Island in Seekonk, Mass, massive snows on a regular basis, super cold. He grew up in obviously his winters in the 60s. He remembered cold that was wicked cold.
It was wicked cold. Yeah,
that's very Boston of you.
I know.
Yeah.
Wicked cold. I did that for our guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I think you're right. The trending on our overall averages are going higher. I think what we're starting to see is the extremes are more extreme. Right. One swing to the next is such. I mean, again, with this polar vortex outbreak again, or the extreme heat waves that we've been seeing, not just here, but look at Australia.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, they had 140 degrees.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's bananas. It's cuckoo bananas. I'm starting to hear more people talking about weather too. Just the other day, Colin Cowherd, big sports guy, has his own podcast. And I saw this whole weather clip where he was talking about, the kind of like the state of local TV. You've probably heard about the Allen Media Group down south. Yeah. They were planning to hub their whole weather through like the Weather Channel, and with so much public backlash, they reversed decision, and all the meteorologists thankfully got to keep their jobs because local weather is so important. But Colin Cowherd was talking about like how local weather is so important. This is better than all of his sport takes, in my opinion. Local weather.
No argument there.
Love you, Colin. The local weather is so very important, and acknowledging like all the crazy stuff we've been seeing, from the wildfires to obviously the cold air, snowing in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it's crazy. You're just seeing things like this with your eyes, and it's like this happens every year. And these big heavy rain events and this flooding, and New York City, people getting trapped in their basements because of remnants of a hurricane. You just see it. It's every other week there's something going on. So I just hear more people talking about it, and that's good. I think it starts with the conversation, and the more that people talk about this stuff and the more they acknowledge how important weather is, it's very important for the industry.
You see it here too. I mean, we bring it up when Glenn and I go to libraries locally and talk about things. Even the species of fish that are in our local waters now has changed. Yeah. Our growing zone has changed. Yeah. It's now a warmer growing zone. There's more species of tropical plants that can survive for longer periods of time here. Yeah. You can't ignore the trend. Yeah. Obviously, the controversial part is how. How did it get this way? We don't care about the how. Right, we worry about what is. Yeah. What is happening. What is going to be forecast. Because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Yeah. How we got here is for other people to talk about and debate. We've never strayed into that controversial realm. We just know what we see is that.
That's it. We can only go. We're science guys. Numbers are numbers. Yep. We're not trying to go out there create our own narrative. Nope. So another pretty interesting one with a local tie for all the anglers out there. Great South Bay, right? Last summer, and I was down here for a weekend and went on a little fishing boat out in the Great South Bay. There was so heavy rains leading up to that event. There was a lot of extra bacteria and and phytoplankton and nutrients in there, and it actually caused a shift in the fish. Yeah. Okay. And they would be they would vacate large areas because all these micro organisms get in there. They take the oxygen, and so it becomes low in oxygen, so the fish might not be there. Yeah. Right, exactly. So just little things like that, and stuff with local ties too. You're seeing it more and more. So
All right, so we've done some research. We got big football games later on today. right. That's right. So we're gonna talk about football. That's right. We're the guys talking football because we don't just do weather.
That's right.
That's what these podcasts. I mean, we're gonna like
everything.
We're gonna do everything.
Everything. Wait till spring.
We've talked about weather a lot because obviously Jeff here being our guest meteorologist, but we got some pretty heavy hitter people like Jeff joining us here for podcast guests. We're pretty excited.
More guests on the way. We won't give up the surprise, but
we got some more good ones. All right, so
we have 2 games today.
That's it. We're down to the last.
Eagles are first. Eagles game's first.
Eagles Commanders at 3 p.m. and then of course the Chiefs and Bills at 6:30. Right to go to the Super Bowl.
No, it's the Chiefs and the refs versus the Bills.
Wow. Yo,
John went there.
Be careful what you're treading,
did it,
buddy.
Don't let them know.
It's the Chiefs and the refs versus the Bills. Let's be honest. You can't ignore some of the horrible calls.
I watched a funny video on the way out here where it's like, everybody, we should all just band together and bet on the Chiefs, because if Vegas is going to lose that much money, then there's no way the Chiefs can win.
Sure. No, but there used to be the Tom Brady rules, right?
Yeah.
And now it feels like there's the Pat Mahomes rules. And
it's Patrick Mahomes.
Sorry. My apologies.
Patrick.
I mean, the only thing I can hope...
Patrick, if you're watching this, my apologies.
Pat Jr. The only thing I can hope is that because people have, the public has complained about what they have been seeing, maybe the refs realize they're a little bit more under the microscope today. Maybe, it's a nicely called game. Let the boys play. Let them play.
What's the forecast?
So the forecasts are pretty mundane, I guess, if you will, today. Just pretty typical late January weather. Kansas City is going to be a little bit below freezing. Obviously, they kick off later, so it'll be a little colder by the end of the game there. But dry weather, and same goes for Philly. They'll be around 40 when they kick off, which is
no
nice.
snow.
Yeah, no snow like they had last week.
Excuse.
Yeah,
good
weather.
Tailgating weather.
Yep, no big wind weather. Okay. So nice.
Any game day recipes for the upcoming Super Bowl, which is February 9th this year? What do you do for your Super Bowl, Glenn? What do you do?
I'm very simple, by the way, if you want to think about it. I'm very simple. I'll get it out of the way. Wings with either Lori's or Old Bay, man. That's it. Very simple. Yeah. That's it. That's
we like wings. I don't know if you heard. We like wings. I've heard that before.
It might be our thing.
Yeah. No, I think this year, I think pizza, wings, probably kind of, sometimes we get it catered, depends, but I think we're just going to go pretty basic this year,
I make my own wings. Shout out to the Hooters recipe I found online. And I've been doing my own wings for a number of years now. And so I've heard people do brats, they do chilies, they go nuts. And
all day, if you make it an all day thing, you have to build up to your big thing. Like if your big thing is wings, you put a little platter out, a little cheese, chips, you got to build up to it.
Chips and dips.
Chips and dips keeps the stomach big. It's the same thing for Thanksgiving. A lot of people are like, I'm going to starve myself all day, and then
you can't do that.
Your stomach shrinks, and then you're going to be like, I'm full after a half a plate.
Yeah,
you gotta get a little bit here, a little bit there. Oh, yeah. That's it. So, predictions. Why don't we start down there, Mr. Don?
All right, start off with the first game: Eagles versus the Commanders. As much as I would love to see the Jaden Daniels story continue, I'm not a fan of either team. I'm a Giant fan. Go Big Blue.
Oh, this is a nightmare for you.
This is a nightmare
the NFC
for me.
East.
Yes, this is absolutely nightmare fuel, especially with Saquon Barkley playing in the Eagles. But I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair.
Me too. Yeah, I got to go Eagles, man. I mean, the Cinderella story is great, but I mean, Philly's good.
Commanders back in the NFC Championship for the first time since the early '90s.
Yep.
My hope is that we will see My hope is that we will see a Super Bowl rematch from 1991 and get Bills and Commanders.
Yeah.
But starting with the first game, I have to go with the Eagles too. I mean, Saquon is just a man on a mission right now. He just looks like he gets shot out of a cannon when he runs, and the Commanders have the worst ranked run defense in the league.
Does Jalen Hurts' injury impact the game?
It does, especially if they put pressure on him early, make him, if he gets hit early, if they got to flush him out of the pocket, make some decisions. I think that's how Washington stays in this game. Otherwise, I think it's going to wind up being like a 34 to 20 type game.
Could be.
Something like that. Should we lock that in? Lock
it in. So we got three Eagles predictions here.
Bills, Chiefs.
Listen, man. I'm going to be pulling for the Bills harder than I think I might have ever pulled for a team I'm not a fan of this game. I just want to see that fan base, those crazy Buffalo Bills fans. See, like, the Bills are fun crazy.
Yeah.
The Eagles are like, watch your step crazy. You know, they're wild, man. They're an interesting breed, but I think, you know, I want Buffalo so bad. I think everybody kind of is like, okay, Mahomes, you know, the three-peat, that's a cool story. Not even Brady did a three-peat.
Right.
But if the Bills don't do it now, when? When are they going to get it done with Josh Allen? I still can't go with them until I see it happen.
Yeah.
Listen, they are a bad matchup for the Chiefs.
Bit, you know?
They are a bad matchup for the Chiefs.
Yes.
But to go into Arrowhead and beat them twice in 1 year is going to be tough to do. I think the Chiefs eke it out some way. And, what about you?
You know what, man? My girlfriend's side of the family, they're all Chiefs fans. I root for the Chiefs, but I don't know, man. I mean, I've watched a lot of Chiefs games this year where people locally don't. And I mean, yeah, they're winning games, but it's close, man. I don't know.
They do.
I'm pulling for the Chiefs. I know I'm gonna get crapped on this podcast for that, but I think there's a chance the Bills pull it off. I do. I think they might.
Before you go to you, Don, I have a crazy stat. If you flipped around all of the one-score games in the NFL this year and had the records go based on that, the Chiefs would have been like 4-13 or something. It was crazy to see that. And here they are, the number one seed.
I watched a couple of games earlier in this season that I thought they were dead in the water. First half, they looked horrible. And I think there's a reason why a whole bunch of people are thinking they're benefiting from some really questionable or marginal calls that just tend to go their way.
They just, and that makes them more glaring because they're in bigger situations and they have a bigger impact on the game, but maybe by themselves wouldn't be as egregious.
If the team was 3-12 and on game 16 they had a call like this, nobody would care.
Right.
But the fact that it was just been so often, and I think the Chiefs do win as much as I want the Bills to win, and I think there's going to be a controversial call in this game. That's my prediction. I'm going out on a limb here. I think it's going to be a very controversial call that's going to be talked about for months.
So we're all three in agreement. Rematch of 2 years ago. Oh no, you went Bills. You went Bills.
I do, yeah.
So
you went Bills Eagles.
Yeah.
Bills.
That would be a battle of the crazy fan base.
I know.
That would be cool.
I don't know. I got a feeling.
So.
All right, listen.
All right.
So Jeff, we want to thank you for being here. Keep an eye on cross-country weather.
Yep.
You can see some of Jeff's info there. We got a bunch of other meteorologists already that we are in communication with to help bring aboard this fun journey we're going to take. Dude.
Thank you guys so much for having me. For those of you that don't know, us three guys, we could sit here and probably talk for another 2 hours.
Easily.
And like all organic, like no scripted
Lawn
anything.
care.
So like this is so much fun.
Fantasy football, baseball.
Yeah, we'll
For
bring
those
it
of you
back.
who don't know, Jeff will call you at 2 o'clock in the morning to say, Don, you don't have enough starting pitchers on your fantasy roster. From California.
I try to help.
And
It's
then
like-
I get a text that says, dude,
Jeff just texted me at 2 o'clock.
I mean, speaking of things to talk about too, we didn't even get to our grass endeavors, our lawn endeavors.
No.
There's
Well,
so
that's
much.
another day.
We could come back in the summer and we'll talk about
First
it.
time I ever met Jeff, he invited me to his house to drink Bill Corbell beer and look at his grass.
With that,
I'm giving you.
Jeff's got to catch the train. So
I'm
we gotta
giving-
get him out of here.
I'm giving the side camera over here. I'm doing the Jim Halpert from The Office,
Yeah.
the side cut.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll
Thank
see
you to
in
the
next podcast.
People's Pub.
Yes.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.